So over the course of this week, we're going to go over, like I mentioned to you last week, this CodeFirst example and the database first example. I've even extended the CodeFirst example to add some other stuff to it. All right, Microsoft recommends that when you go out, you think about how you want to set this up. Now, I could show it to you. There's a 4-minute long video, but it basically says this. If you look up on the screen here, that you have 4 different options, all right, when you're working on this stuff. So the author says that if you want the code to basically create a database for you, you use CodeFirst. All right. If you've already got a database and you want the database to create the code for you, you do database first. It's also possible for you to use something that's called model first. You're going to see all these as we end up going. I'm not going to do anything really with model first other than to show you how you can upgrade your database using either the model or the actual database itself and what you have to do. All right, so they do explain it, and it's pretty good. Then down at the bottom they say, hey, if you're still not sure, someplace in here it says go out and look online at our documentation for the entity framework. All right, and the reason that I'm taking the time to show you this is, again, it's under docs.microsoft.com/enus/ef, because they explain there's a big section in here on Entity Framework 6, which is what we are going to be using. All right, so if you do want more, or you think I didn't give you that much, or whatever, feel free to take a look at that. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through this right here. Now, there's a reason I want to show this to you, because this literally has, if you look through there, probably 10 lessons in it. We're not going to go over all 10 of those lessons. All right? But we are going to start looking through some of the stuff that's here. All right? Just so you know. All right? So the first one that we're going to go through is called Getting Started with Entity Framework CodeFirst using MVC 5. Now, when I gave this to you, I only went through a certain part. Over the weekend, I was going through more of it. Okay? Was dealing with I don't even want to get into it. All right, I didn't get as far as I want to. I'm not going to say any more than that. All right? But I want to bring this up because, again, this is where we're going to start. Now, the author mentions here, it's called Get Started with Entity Framework 6, CodeFirst using MVC 5. The author says, hey, you know what, for new development, you really should use Core Razor. That's what's in what's called the new version, all right, which was called MVC 6, but now quite often is referred to as Core or Core.net. Goes by a few different names, all right. So as it says, in this series, it'll explain how to build what they call the ContosoUniversity sample application. It's a simple university website. We're going to take it a little bit further and do a few other things with it. All right? Why? Because this will very much mimic both what we will be going over in the book in chapters 7 through 13, and in the project I'd like us to start working on, hopefully starting next week. All right? So we're going to follow the steps in here, and the only way I can really make sure you do it, they have downloads in here. They say you can download the code. Didn't work when I tried it, but you can go and try it if you want to. This is the kind of thing that we're going to create. We're going to have several pages in here. As you'd guess, all right, here are students. First name, or last name, first name, etc. When they enrolled, and there's an edit, a details, and a delete. So for instance, if I press the edit and I'm on this student, this is what comes up. if I press delete and I'm on, well, maybe that's a little later, one of the students, it will come up and ask me. It'll say, are you sure you want to delete this? All right. So what we're going to do today is go over about the first third of it. It may take a while. It may not take that long at all. All right. I did not finish with the second part of it. All right. And because I did not finish with the second part of it, this is about as far as I'm going to go with it today. Some of this stuff that we go through to you might very well seem repetitious, or stuff we've kind of done before. All right. If that's the case, well, then you're getting good at it. All right. So like I said, we're going to follow this. So please start up a new session for Visual Studio 2019. We are going to create a new project. All right. As we go down in here, it will be a ASP.NET Web Application .NET Framework, as we have been doing. All right. I'm going to create it on my desktop. And they want to be called ContosoUniversity one page. Now, I've already been working on it, and I don't want to use that. I want to start brand new. So I'm just going to call mine ContosoUNIV. All right, that's the only difference. Right? You can call it university. You can call it whatever you'd like to. All right. This will be different from the way we have done it previously, in that once you click Create, we're going to choose MVC. All right? Not empty, but MVC. Now, as soon as we click that, hopefully you saw that the MVC here is already checked. This will create a lot more stuff at the beginning than we've had previously. I did show you this the first day, but it's been a while. The other thing about this I want to explain is if you look up on the screen here, notice that right now it says no authentication. We're going to keep it like that. But notice we can change it if we want to. And what I want you to see in here is that we have 4 types of possible authentication. All right? Now, to say no authentication is just that. Anybody can use this. You don't even have to be logged in. Now, that's typically not what you would do. All right? That's typically not what you would do. All right? This individual or user accounts, as it says, for applications that store user profiles in an SQL Server database. So in other words, if we were all connected to a database server in here, so let's say that we were out in the real world type of thing, we could use that. All right. Next, work or school accounts. It says for applications that authenticate users using Active Directory, Microsoft Azure Active Directory, or Office 365. I'm not going to do that either. The one that is used most often, if you look up on the screen here, is this one, the Windows authentication, which means that if you are logged in to your account into the machine using Windows, you can use this. All right. Now, the reason I'm going through the time and effort of telling you this is if you choose no authentication like we're going to do, because I'm just following their lead, we won't have anything set up for login and register. Does that make sense to everybody? If you choose the other ones, you will have something set up for login or register. All right? But what we have here will be at best minor. How's that? So make sure it's set to no authentication. Click OK. All right? Brings us back to here. Click Create. It'll take a minute or two, not even a minute. couple seconds. And again, I know you've all seen this before, but I do want to make sure you know. I'm going to close that. Notice now in controllers, we've got a home controller. In views, we've got a home, about, and index view. That's nothing new, all right? There's a few other things that got created in here, such as we got our content folder in there that's got both our CSS file, which is called site.css, and all of the Bootstrap CSS files. Also, if you look in scripts, we've got the Bootstrap JavaScript, jQuery JavaScript, all right, etc. So we've got JavaScript files. We've got stuff we wouldn't have otherwise. All right? Now, you don't have to do this, but I am going to, just to show you, because you've seen it before, I'm going to go to the index page here, and I'm going to run this. Or just tell it to view it in the browser. You know, it's funny. I don't mean to say this. I don't mean about you. Okay, but I was telling the class how people get sick in my class this morning. I'm hoping it's not me, that Luke had to get up and John had to get up, and I'm hoping I'm not making people sick. All right. You laugh, but I'm being serious. All right. So when I ran it, nothing special, but hopefully, and I shouldn't have run it that fast maybe, but hopefully you saw this, and that is, we don't have any login or register. Everybody got that? All right, we created a brand new project. We called it ContosoUniversity, okay? And what's that? We created it not as an empty project, but as an MVC project, yeah. All right. So the first thing that we are asked to do in here, let me go back to this. I don't want that one. The first thing that we are asked then to do in here, so I've done this. Again, I emailed you the updated PDF so you all have it. But it's not a big thing, but they want us to come in and open up the shared layout, the underscore layout.cs HTML file, and make two changes. We want each occurrence of my ASP.NET application and the application name to change to ContosoUniversity, and they want us to add student, course, instructor, and departments, and delete the contact. You say, I don't get it, you will in about 30 seconds. All right, so let's go in under shared right here. Let's go into our layout file. All right, so I went in under shared to the layout file, and what are we doing? Well, the first thing up here is up near the top where we've got the view bag title. We don't want it to say my ASP.NET application. We just want this to say ContosoUniversity. Okay, that's the first thing. That's it for the head section, but if we work our way down to the body section, you'll notice again it says here application name. We want to change that to ContosoUniversity. And I got to learn to spell. There we go. All right, so I changed this, my view bag title, and I changed this action link. All right. Now, we want to add 3 more links in here. To make it easy for myself, I'm going to grab the 3 that are in here and paste them. So I have 6 in here now. We don't want this contact link. Why? Because the authors tell us to move it, remove it. We don't want this contact link. All right? That said, What we do want in here, and I should leave it in there, I guess. We want students, we want courses, we want instructors, and we want departments. So again, we have gone in here and made about a half a dozen changes. We went up first into our title, and under our view bag title, we changed the name there to ContosoUniversity. All right. Next, we went down, and the first action link that you see in the body section, we changed that to ContosoUniversity. All right. Then we removed the contact page because we don't need that, but we added these 4 pages. All right. And now that I look at it, courses. Okay. Let's make all these correct. We want index. So, oh boy. We don't want to get to all these from home. Get rid of all the homes. That should be correct. Home about students versus about yes. Does it make sense? Please look up on the screen here. Does it make sense to everyone that we will need a student controller, a course controller, an instructor controller, and a department controller? Does that make sense to everyone? We don't have those yet. So even though I can save this and I can run it, all right, and the changes should be reflected in here. In other words, there's one change. There, oh, I guess I didn't change that one. I thought I did. So I got to change the one for my footer. But notice now, home about students, courses, instructors, and departments. The home works, the about works, so I can go back and forth. If I try to go to any of these 4 pages, they will fail. All right, just to prove it, it can't be found because we don't have a student controller yet. All right, I don't think that's anything that's real earth-shattering to anybody that you don't understand. All right, finally on the footer, where it says myasp.net application, I want that to say ContosoUniversity also. All right. So, one last time, promise. Change the title to ContosoUniversity. The first action link, make that ContosoUniversity. All right? Then come in here and make sure that the links that we have are home, about, students, courses, instructors, and departments. Now, I'm asking you a question. Does that make sense? Does what we've done make sense? And then finally, change in the footer make sure that says Contoso University. All right? All right. The next thing that we are to do is under Home right now, we've got the generic index.cshtml. We get the one that comes with a project. All right? However, if you go, and again, I sent you this, but if you go out here, what you're going to find is the one that we actually want here is we want to replace this. Why? Because we want to replace it with Contoso specific information. All right? We don't want this to look like a generic site. We want this to look like a Contoso site. All right? So there's Contoso University. Welcome to Contoso. And there'll be a few other things in here. All right? So I'm going to grab this. Copy it to the clipboard, come back into here, and replace all of it with, give me a break. With this. So why is to give me that? Copy. Paste. Okay. I'll try it from here. Go. So if you look, I don't know why I've got that, but I'll fix that in a minute. Contoso University, okay, I've got my div screwed up. But notice it looks a little more, after I fix it, like the way it should look. All right? Still is screwed up, so I'll fix that. I think everything else is fine now. Okay? That's the way that it should look when you get done with everything. Why my view bag? Somehow I think I lost my... Yes, I did. Not pretty, functional now, I guess. Build it from scratch. I think this actually goes to the tutorial. Download it. I think that goes. Okay? All right. So right now we've got a working home page, we've got a working about page, and that's it. All right. Again, if you walked in late or whatever, I just want to make sure everybody knows this. We are going off of this site. All right. And it's tutorial getting started with Entity Framework 6, CodeFirst using MVC 5. We're going to go over the first lesson today, which is approximately 30 pages. All right. And the whole thing that we're going to be going over is about 3.5 times that. All right. It's about 110 pages. We will do more tomorrow. But since yesterday I only got halfway through the second section due to my own ignorance, I don't want to go on until I've gone through it and made sure everything works okay. Because if there's an error or something wrong, I want to be able to tell you so we can at least hopefully fix it. Did you totally replace what was in there? I don't know. That's just the home page. I'd have to see it, but I'm not worried about it. Okay? I actually changed my home page on mine. I went out to Google Images, and there actually is an image for ContosoUniversity. So I've got that one. So, I mean, what you're going to end up in the end putting on your home page is kind of up to you. All right? Now, you know this, but we're saying it again anyway. By now, you should understand we want to install the Entity Framework package. And every one of you should now understand there are two ways that we can do this. We can either go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager Console, which is what the author asks us to do. So I'm going to do that in just a minute, and it brings up our Package Manager prompt. Or we can go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Manage NuGet Packages for Solution, and we can pick out, all right, it shows us what packages we currently have installed. If you go through all these, what you'll notice what's not there is the Entity Framework. So if you go to Browse, you'll find Entity Framework. There it is. But again, I'm going to follow the lead that the author puts, it has. So in other words, I'm going to go down to my Package Manager console right here. And as he says, I'm going to say install, and this should be case insensitive. Install -package space Entity Framework. All right. If you can't read that very well, then hopefully you can read this. Install -package Entity Framework, which does what? It brings the Entity Framework into our project. If you look up on the screen right now, and you look at references, what you should notice up at the top, there is nothing here. There is nothing here for Entity Framework. However, once I type in install -package Entity Framework and I hit enter, goes through and it's loading a bunch of stuff, gives me my prompt back, and now I have these two references. A reference to Entity Framework and a reference to Entity Framework.SQL server. All right? Which again made the Entity Framework available now to, all right, it made it available to my project. All right? All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create 3 classes which will represent tables. But I want you, if you would please, first to look up on the screen. I don't think this is very complex, but I just want to make sure everybody gets it. So the 3 classes that we're going to create, that they're called entity classes, all right, will be course, enrollment, and student. And notice, if we go down a little further, there is a one-to-many relationship between course and enrollment, and a one-to-many relationship between student and enrollment. All right? That means that any one course can have 0 or more people enrolled in it. Any one student can enroll in 0 or more courses. Does that make sense? Ideally, what you're going to have, again, in a relational database is as many one-to-many relationships as you can possibly have. All right. The author says, in the following sections, we will create a class for each one of the entities. If you try to compile the project before you've created all the classes, we're going to get errors. All right? So we want to go into the models folder, and we want to create a class called student.cs. You already know how to do this. So again, I'm going into the models folder. I'm right mouse clicking, choosing add, going down to the very bottom where we have class. All right? And putting in student singular.cs. All right? And that'll build that. Not very much to it. You've seen this before. I do want to mention something. It's discussed in a few pages in this handout, but I want you to hear it. There are a lot of people who do this kind of thing for a living. Many people think that when you're working with table names and class names, etc., that these names should be plural. This should be students. And your table name should be singular. Some people believe the opposite. All right? But it's like anything else. You're probably never, if you have a room full of people that know what they're talking about, you're never going to find everybody that agrees with everything anyway. All right. So once you've done that, we're going to go and replace all the code that's in there with this code. So let me replace it. And there it is. All right. Please look up on the screen. I know you've heard this stuff before, but there's two things I want to say. Number one, notice that enrollment is underlined because we have not created it yet. All right? That's why we get that. The second thing, notice in there it says I collection. That means it's possible that a student can have multiple enrollments. Didn't we talk about that before? A student can be enrolled in more than one course. When you've got more than one like this, when you've got a one-to-many relationship, which is what we're showing here, this has to be some kind of a list or a collection. The reason I'm telling you that is when we do the other tables, you're going to see some of that and some of it will look different. All right? The other thing the author mentions in here is this is put in there as virtual. What that means is basically it's not going to be, it'll be compiled, but the final product won't be compiled until it's needed. And the author even mentions that it allows you to do what's called lazy loading. And the author gives you a hyperlink. So if you want to learn more about it, not a problem. Now, please look at the different fields that are in here. If we want this to work, in other words, if we want to make sure that we generate a database off of this thing, this field right here, this one, has to be either called ID, like it is, or the name of the class ID. Did you all hear that? All right. I'm saying this field, which is going to be our primary key, has to either be called ID or student ID. Otherwise, this won't work when we go through the whole process later. All right? Hopefully the other fields that are in there are at least fairly self-explanatory. All right? Other than this one, which I already went over. So the author says, and these are their words, and they're Microsoft words. Of course, they're better than mine. The enrollments property that we just looked at is known as a navigation property. It's allowing us to have a one-to-many relationship between the student table and the enrollment table. All right? Again, if you want any more than that, just come in and just read the rest. Thank you. So again, as the author mentions here, navigation properties typically are used for lazy loading. And if you want more, we're not going to go that far in here, but if you want more, you can go to that tutorial. All right. If a navigation property can hold multiple entities, that's what we have here. We have a one-to-many. Since it's a one-to-many, as it said, it has to be either a list or a type of collection. Usually it'll be of type I collection. All right. Now we're going to go and create another one that is called enrollment.cs. So again, going back, right mouse clicking on models, add class, putting in here enrollment.cs. Notice as soon as I do and I jump back to my student class, as soon as I put something in here, which I will in a minute, this is not going to be underlined anymore. All right? And they want us to replace what was in there with this. See, am I a liar? No. There, it went away. So let's look at everything that's in here. All right? First off, look on the screen. Get rid of the D's because Rankin don't give no D's. All right? So we're only going to have ABCF. That's what's going to be in our enumeration. An enum is a user-defined data type. So grade is a user-defined data type which can only hold A, B, C, or F. All right? Not only that, if you look down a little further, that question mark that you see on line 13 after the word grade means that the grade can be nullable. When someone first registers for a class, they don't have a grade. You all have grades now because there have been assignments. So you've all got grades. But the first day you walked in here, you didn't have a grade. Your grade was, in essence, null. All right? And just like we had previously, we've got something that's underlined. But before we go there, look at the difference. Public virtual course gets set. And then look at the other one. Public virtual I collection of type enrollments get set. This, since it's an I collection, means there's a one-to-many relationship between student and enrollment. Here, we don't have that. So what we're saying is each one of these enrollment records that we're going to put in here is for one student. And it's for one course. Think about that. All right? When you came in, I don't know how many courses you're registered for, but my guess is at least some of you are registered for one or more Gen Ed courses this semester. All right? You did register, but when you went in there, even if you registered and did all of them at the same time, the system, when they put them in, fills them in if you sign up for 3 classes, it's going to have 3 records for you. Does that make sense? Because you are a student in 3 different classes. All right. This is also showing again how enrollment loops back to student. So these 2 fields, if you look up on the screen, in essence what we're saying is these 2 fields that you see in blue are foreign keys. That's what we're saying. When we go a little further and we look at some stuff, and we look at more data annotations, I believe we can even put up here, I could be wrong, but I think we can even put up here, like, whoops, foreign key. Okay? I'm just going to leave it the way it is because I'm following the author's lead here. All right? Again, we've got the error here because we haven't created course yet. And I believe that's what they'll want us to do next. As it says, again, the enrollment ID. Now, the author shows you this. Notice this. Enrollment ID is the name of your primary key. The other one was just called ID. If you've got 10 tables, you can call each one of them ID. Or you can, for each one, you can call it the name of the class, ID. And the author says, do it one way or do it the other. Don't do it what he's done here. In other words, some of one and some of the other. Don't do that. But he's just doing it to you, for you, to show you that it can be done that way. Talked about enum, talked about the nullable already. All right. We're going to come in and we're going to create one more class. That class will be called course. So again, come in here in your models, right mouse click, add class. It will be course.cs. Remove everything that's in there and replace it with the information that you see in the handout or whatever, wherever you are. Okay. So let's look at this and see what's in here. All right. This first thing we're going to see in just a couple of minutes, so I'm going to hold off on that. All right. Database generator. We'll see it in just a minute. This, again, is our primary key. These are the other 2 fields. And this is saying that this loops back to enrollments. So in other words, all right, this is a collection. All right. Again, if you don't like my verbiage, look at what the author has. Probably is much better than mine. What happened there? I don't know. All right. And the author says, we'll talk more about the database generated attribute a little bit later. All right. So right now, we have 3 classes. We've got a class called enrollment.cs. We've got a class that is called course.cs. And we've got a class that's called student.cs. We've got those 3 classes. But right now, there is no bridge. There is nothing that's going to link that to let the system know that what we want to do is basically make those into database tables. All right. So as mentioned here, to do that, the next thing we want to do is we want to add a database context. Now, one of the reasons I picked this one is because this is the way I kind of learned it, and that is in the models folder directly, there should ideally only be the stuff that's representing your data. All right. This isn't actually representing the data. This is our glue between the data and the database. So what we're going to do, if you look up on the screen, is we're going to go up to the name of our project, which again for mine is ContosoUniv. I'm going to right mouse click and choose add and choose folder, new folder, and call this DAL. And DAL stands for Data Access Layer. All right. That's where we're going to go and add our new class. What class? Well, again, if you look up on the screen here, the author says, the main class that coordinates the entity framework functionality is the database context class. We have talked about this before. The key thing right there with database context class, see where I've got that in gray? It must inherit from DB context. All right. So in your code, you can specify the entities. All right. You can also customize different types of behavior. So what we want to do is in that folder, that DAL folder that we just created, we want to right mouse click in there and choose add new class. And the name of the class we should add is school context.cs. So right mouse click on the DAL folder, add class at the bottom, school context.cs. All right. And again, as we have been doing, we're going to come in and basically replace what's in there with what we want in there. So I'll replace it, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what that is. All right. Now, if you look, you've seen some of this stuff already, but notice we've got a using statement in here, using ContosoUniversity.models. Please look up on the screen. If we had taken this school context and put it inside of our models folder, we wouldn't need that. All right? But that's considered bad practice to do it that way. It's considered better practice to have this DAL folder like we did, but now it needs to know we're going to be using students, enrollments, and courses from ContosoUniversity.models. Okay? All right. Yeah, you need the system data entity when you're working with this and the data entity model configuration conventions. All right. Then it tells us where it lives, ContosoUniversity.dal. Okay. And what? Well, what do we have in here? We've got a class. The class is called school context. The class inherits from DB context. Already mentioned that to you. This, and you should all get this by now, that's the constructor. How do I know that's the constructor? Because it says public, it has no return type, but it has the same exact name as the class itself. All right? That's what's going to run when we instantiate or create a new instance of school context. So we haven't done that. We're going to do that after the break in just a few minutes. All right? Then we have in here, these are what are going to represent our three tables. Students of type student, enrollments of type enrollment, courses of type course. All right? Now, I don't know why they decided to show this to you like they did, but they did. So again, I'm just going to go through it with you. It says model builder here, .conventions.remove. See that? It actually is convention that table names are pluralized. Now, you say, well, I don't agree with that. Well, then you don't have to do it that way. All right? But that's convention. This is saying, forget convention. We want these database names not to be pluralized. All right? So they'll be course, instructor, etc. Again, if you don't like my verbiage, notice up here, the code creates a DB set. This thing is hyperlinked up the wazoo. So if you go, well, I still don't really get what DB set is, click the hyperlink and take a look. All right. So as it says, an entity set corresponds to the table, and the tables, the entity set, are filled with entities. Each entity is a row or record in that table. Now, the author gives you some stuff here just so you see this. It says, note, you can omit this. If you keep, the more stuff you omit, all right, the more you're just expecting, well, the software will do it. All that stuff, when they say you may omit this, I'm not. All right. So the author says the name of the connection string, which you'll add later to the web.config, is passed to the constructor. That's this. And you'll notice that connection string is the same name as the class name, which is okay. This is that thing about the table name, so I'm not going to say it again. Again, you don't like what I said, go read it. Read it yourselves. Let's put the test data in, then we'll take a break. All right? Now, this is a lot of copying. Sorry about that. All right? The author says the entity framework can automatically create a database when the application runs. Be real leery of this. The way we're going to set this thing up is that every time you make a change to the database will be dropped and re-entered. Does that make sense to everybody? But you would not want to do that with an actual application database with real people in it, because you'd be dropping them and then adding them again. What if you dropped them and when you added them they didn't come back? You know, there was a mistake in your string, or you know, your test data, or what, your data I should say, or whatever. So this is fine for testing purposes, but you shouldn't do it like this with a, quote, real database, unquote. So the author says now in the DAL folder, we're going to create yet another class. This class will be called SchoolInitializer.cs. So I'm going to right mouse click in DAL, add class, and it is School Initializer, big S for school, big I for initializer. Jam those two words together, .cs, and that gives us this. And we're going to change that. Why? Look on the screen, please. This is going to have all of our information in it. Now, please look up on the screen, because I want to show you and make sure you get what the author's doing here. All right? So, this is our school initializer. Notice it's of type system.data.entity. This says drop and recreate the database if the model, which we haven't even seen yet, you will after the break, changes. So it says here seed. This method right here is going to allow us to put all of the data in. Everybody hear what I said? It's going to allow us to put in all of the data. So notice we're saying students is a new list of students, and here they are. All right? Carson, Alexander, Meredith, Alonzo, etc. All right? Now, the other thing is, please look up on the screen, because the author puts all that stuff in. And then the author says, save changes. Technically, you don't have to do that. You only need to do one save changes at the very bottom. The reason that the author put it in like that, and he says this a little bit later, the reason that it's in there like this with the context.save changes is, let's say I try to put in, I go in and I try to put in my student records and I screwed up. I take a field that's that's supposed to be a string and I make it a non-string or whatever. The program's going to poop out right there then. All right? This should work. I've done it 2 or 3 times already. So I'm literally going to take my mouse and start highlighting under the using statement here and go down quite a bit. To right there. Copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to replace what is in this school initializer with all of that data. All right, so there's my students, there's my courses, there's my enrollments. All right, and it worked out very nice for us that no student got a D that was in there. So even, we removed the D's, and they didn't have any in there to begin with. Now, before we go run this, let's quick take a look. Like I said, it's getting late already. I've kept you an hour, more than an hour, but I want to just go over this part because the author does a good job here of saying the seed method takes the database context object as an input parameter, and the code in the method uses that to add new entities or new records to the database. But guess what? We don't even have a database yet. We won't until after the break. All right? So for each entity type, students, enrollment, or student enrollment and course, the code creates a collection of new entities, records. It adds them to the correct DB set property, and it saves them. All right? So we will do the other part after the break, but it would be a nice idea right now for you to go in and do a file save all. All right? It is just about 1:40, so let's please come back at 1:55, and we'll finish up this part of the section.